Welcome to the comic zone.
What is up, fellow nerds? This is the Comic Zone podcast. It's your man DJ Nike. We got my man Bill here, and on the phone it's Big Mike. How's it going, man?
What's going on, fellers?
Excited. We've got so much going on. That's all right. We're still glad you can connect with us, though.
Yeah. Hopefully, I sound better this time.
Oh, definitely, 100%.
A lot clearer.
Yeah.
Now, I know we've got a bunch of two big events that are coming up. Next weekend, we've got Casper Comic-Con. I believe this is year number 6.
Yep.
So that one's going to be off the hook Saturday and Sunday.
I think it's 5.
Yeah. It's the 24th and the 25th of June. And then a couple weeks after that, we have the Wyoming Pop Culture Con. And that's going to be the first one for that event. And I think that one's going to be pretty awesome, too.
Yeah, a lot of celebrities going to be there, and we're going to be there too, at least part of the time, and hopefully recording. So if you're there, say hello and say hi, and come on the podcast.
Hell yeah!
If you're doing, and I'll probably do a little video there too.
You know, one of my favorite things that we've done, like since we've been doing this show, is when we did do the Comic-Con last year. And,
right.
I mean, that was a blast. That was one of our most listened to episodes as well. Did you know that?
No, I didn't.
Sean?
Yeah. I mean, especially if you kind of take, I think legit listeners, new listeners is by far, I think the biggest episode, the best.
Right.
I mean, because the other ones, we've got the Facebook algorithm thing, which kind of cooked the books a little bit.
Right.
So it's a little askew. This one didn't have this. Those were legit numbers that you could, take to the bank as much as you can with the podcast.
Right.
Anyways.
And you know what? I'm always going to remember that one because I remember we were talking about, different things we had found, different things we would look for. And that was like we were talking about, some of the dream things we were going to get. And like right as I was talking about the one issue of New Mutants 98 that I was looking for, that was my holy grail. Then Chelsea came up with the dude, the comic book seller, and was like, hey, he wants to talk to you. I was like, that couldn't have been timed any better if we tried.
We were talking right about it, and then he just came right up.
Oh yeah, it came up during the show. That was one of my favorite moments, dude.
Yeah,
like it was so perfect. It almost sounded like we planned it,
and we so did not.
I wish Chelsea had a mic, and she could have like said, "Hey, Sean," and then had the dude that had the comic New Mutants 98.
Yeah,
come hither.
That would have been cool. Yeah.
Get over here.
What a cool moment. Like you fucking, and then, I mean, how crazy was that?
Yeah. Like it was unbelievable. And, that was a big deal for me because I had that book before, and it's always been a decent book because it was the first appearance of Deadpool. But, after the movies came out, it went up from, being like a $50 to $100 book to being a $400 book. And they were really hard to come by, especially good quality ones. So
because nobody cared about it.
Yeah.
Like I've had the story that I found it in a forgotten in a long box without a bag, without a board, just sitting there all alone. Its poor little Deadpool self.
Right.
Neglected. But because it wasn't, nobody thought about it at the time.
Right.
It wasn't until Ryan Reynolds in Hollywood. Ka-ching.
But yeah, that was a great moment for me.
He was doing that for a long time before they ended up making that, right?
Oh yeah. Yeah, the original that came out in like 92, 93. So, with
no, I mean Deadpool, like he was probably trying to get that movie made forever.
Well, yeah, I know him and Rob Liefeld, the creator of Deadpool, Cable, Domino, most of the New Mutant X-Force team from the 90s. He created all of those, and yeah, he'd been in talks with Ryan Reynolds for years because they actually retro changed some things. He wasn't originally Canadian. And, when they started getting in the talks, that was one of the things they retroactively made him being Canadian like Logan.
Like Wolverine.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, because he wasn't anything like what he is now.
They've made him more comedic.
So he's always kind of a smart ass, just not quite as over the top.
Yeah, that's how things have changed. He's definitely been over the top, but like his little other nickname was always the Merc with the mouth. So he was always a wisecracker, but
talking shit.
Yeah, they definitely took it to the next level. And honestly, the movies are more where the character's been the last 20 years, vice the first 10 years of it anyway. So I still think it's a good interpolation.
I was watching X-Men Last Stand last night. I mean, it's kind of funny that we're talking about this because those movies, they're not the best superhero movies ever,
right?
By any means, but I still like the X-Men movies. You know what I mean?
Yeah, I gave them a lot of bad press. But going back and watching them, and especially knowing that they came before the MCU, for what they weren't bad.
They were a Hollywood movie.
Yeah.
I mean, and
they're somewhat tied into the MCU now. We got Charles Xavier and then Deadpool coming up. So, I mean, maybe we'll get more of those characters from those movies brought over.
I can tell you definitely we are, but I'm not going to put any spoilers out on here for that because there's some things that I've been knowing that's going to go on for a while, but I think we'll save those for a little bit later because I've been holding those pretty close to my chest.
Do a different episode?
Yeah.
Like an X-Men episode? We should
Definitely.
do an X-Men episode.
that's long overdue.
Yeah.
But we're actually gathered here today to talk about Transformers Rise of the Beasts.
Yes.
Yeah.
I mean, talk about an awesome blockbuster movie from start to finish.
And you guys went together without me. I mean, that's pretty cool.
Yep.
Hey, you got to think about it though. We went to Across the Spider-Verse without him, so it was only right.
Yeah, I invited him though. You guys didn't invite me.
That's right.
That's cool. I'm not even mad.
Nope, they're just bringing it up again.
Yeah, just bring. It's cool. No, I took my kids to it. I've been trying to take my kids to a movie every time one comes out that's worth seeing.
Right.
And I took them. My youngest son got a little bored in this one, but I think that's just because he didn't know what was going on.
Right.
But I mean, overall, like before we get started, I mean, this is kind of a tradition now.
Right.
What do you guys give it at the beginning of the episode? And we'll do this at the beginning and the end. That way you can give your first impression score. And then after the talk, maybe you score it a little different. So,
okay,
9 out of 10, or 1 to 10. What do you give it, Sean?
I am going to say I'm going to give it a 9. And there's one major reason that I'm not going to give it a 10, and we'll get into that a little bit later. But in also saying that I'm giving it a 9, next to the very first live action film, I'm going to say this is my favorite.
Okay, just to be clear, what would be a 10? Like just any movie that you consider to be a 10.
Well, the reason it's not a 10 is there were some small things that I think they could have fixed. But like I said, we'll get into that a little bit later, and I'll explain those. Yeah. I just don't want to give those out just yet.
All right, Bill.
I'm going like 8.5. I mean, it was a great blockbuster movie. It was entertaining. There was one issue which I want to bring up later.
Is it the one we talked about?
Yes, yeah, it is a little bit.
Yeah, okay, yep.
And it needs the right context and a full examination before I can even get into it. It'll make sense.
We're just getting a number right now, and I think. Oh, yeah, I'd probably give it around an 8, 7 or an 8. Just initially, just first impressions without any kind of spoiler, I just thought the first half of the movie was a little slow.
Mm-hmm.
And it does kind of, I mean, some movies, they start off really good and then end badly.
Right.
I felt like this one started, not badly, but like slower. And then it really got really good, like in the latter half of the movie. And then by the end, I was like fully invested, getting all teary eyed and fucking all the damn shit. You know what I mean?
Definitely.
So I mean, yeah, I think an 8's a good score. Probably, I'd say, yeah, 8.
So I think the beginning was a little bit interesting for me because to me, it was a double-edged sword. Mm-hmm. Because one, it was great that it brought in a lot of the human development, allowed those characters to kind of have a life to breathe and become their own thing. Then
which characters?
Humans,
the
human characters. So right. I mean, that was really their story point, and also getting the Porsche Transformer Mirage. Mirage kind of, and
I thought it
the
was
guy going back
interesting.
and forth.
Mirage. Sorry, I thought it was interesting. Mirage taking the main character seat, if you will, as far as the Transformers go. He kind of took Bumblebee's place.
And you know what? That's
Which
one of the
was
things that
good.
I liked actually.
I liked it too.
Not to take anything away from Bumblebee, because if there's one thing that I think Michael Bay did right in the live action movies was turning Bumblebee into a badass. He took, a character that was like the little brother, never got in a fight. If he got in a fight, he lost. You know what I mean? And he was just a V-dub. Like he didn't become the Camaro until that was something that Michael Bay did, and now all the Transformer lore after that has had Bumblebee as
Oh, you're saying in the cartoon he wasn't badass, but in the
no, yeah,
he is a fucking badass motherfucker. And there's a part we'll talk about a little later that where he does some serious ass whooping, and it's pretty fucking cool.
definitely. So I do want to start off with one thing. So there were two main characters, but the main male character in this film, I like that they introduced new ones. We don't have Sam Witwicky, which was what's the guy's name?
Shia LaBeouf.
Yeah, it didn't have Shia LaBeouf in it. We don't have Mark Wahlberg, although
we did get a mention.
Yeah, we did get a mention, which I thought was definitely hilarious. Because we should probably say that this film takes place after Bumblebee, which took place in the 80s. This one's in the 90s, so.
A mention of who?
Mark Wahlberg. Like, they didn't mention his character, but remember, Mark Wahlberg he was the main human character in the last two Transformers movies before Bumblebee. So the last two Michael Bay ones, Age of Extinction.
Are you talking about when they're talking to Bumblebee and he says, "I know a human helped you before, but
no, this was no." So this was in the car. They said, "Oh man, Mark left the Funky Bunch. He's gonna take a career in acting.
Yeah.
I hope that works out well for him or something like that."
Yeah.
Think about that. That's pretty funny.
Yeah, that was just one of those little cheeky, in universe jokes. And
Chinky.
Yeah, hey man, I've been watching Scooby, all right, Jinkies. But yeah, I thought that was one of those comical moments that the fans that have been along for the whole ride definitely caught. So it was funny.
Yeah. You know what I liked about the movie overall too is that it just felt way more streamlined. They
definitely.
But during the Michael Bay ones, they just started to get like so much going on with the main plot and then the subplots, and then there's plots everywhere.
Yeah, and they didn't do a good job of bringing any of them to a close.
Just like the special effects then brought up this whole muddiness visually storyline, the same thing kind of happened.
They tried to do Unicron in the last one, and I felt like they did a way better job with it
this time. Yeah,
it felt like it did feel similar to Fantastic Four, the Silver Surfer, Rise of the Silver Surfer. So the second,
I can get that.
Felt a lot like that movie though.
The one thing I will say though, I think when it comes to these Hollywood blockbusters, and especially when you're doing something that a franchise that is going to go a long way, once you've been successful. And this is one of the issues people have with Michael Bay too. I think what they were planning on doing with Unicron was that they were going to do like a sequel or maybe a trilogy out of it, and then it didn't happen because the reviews were so bad. Because it wasn't like I told you, none of those films did bad financially, but it was like I think
it's not necessarily a bad movie. I enjoyed it. It just was a lot.
Yeah, so I think instead of trying to plan for the future, they just worked on making a good story, and I think they did a good job with it. Kind of like, again, how they did the first film. You're not worried about what happens next. Let's just do this right and see what happens after that.
Right. The first movie is definitely probably my favorite. I thought the second one was pretty good too.
Yeah.
But yeah, I think the first one was done really well, and like you said, say what you will about Michael Bay, but if you don't enjoy it, just don't watch it. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
Like, I think his movies have their own appeal, and maybe he has too many explosions and slow-mo
But yeah,
scenes.
I don't agree with that. You know what I mean? Like, if you like
I don't
action
think that's
movies,
true either.
yeah, like
It's
if
just,
it's like the same reason that people hate on the Fast and Furious films. If you don't like them, then don't watch them. But don't sit there and break them down. They're action movies. They are what they're supposed to be. You know what I mean? If you want to compare, like, you could definitely put Transformers, Fast and Furious, and even films like 007 all in the same action genre, John Wick. Like, we know a lot of those things would never happen in real life, but it's cinematic and it does look cool to see. So if you're going to go down and break down every aspect of it, of course, you know, somebody's going to have something to complain about. But I think you need to go into it understanding that you're going to see an action movie and not, you know, break down cinema.
ultra realism.
Yeah, that's not, yeah.
Like, oh, his performance was riveting.
Yeah, you're not getting Shakespeare in the park.
Yeah.
We just want to see people get shot and somebody kick a bunch of ass.
And in this case, you want to see big fucking 10, 20-foot robots transform, fight each other, and at least have some semblance of a good story.
So should we get into a little spoilers then?
Well, yeah.
Hold on, real quick.
Start talking.
Yeah, go ahead. Go ahead.
So when he rips off the wing and then stabs the other Decepticon, or that wasn't a Decepticon, but these battles, Terracons were brutal. I mean, they were vicious. They were ripping arms off and then beating the robot with the arms.
Yes.
They were the wings or stabbing people. I mean, it was, and I think what was good is those scenes were pretty minimal. There wasn't a bunch of robots that they were able to kind of close up on, like 2 robots really fighting or 3 with some stuff in the background. So you could really focus in on those money shots.
The fights were really good. I think all of them were, and just like any kind of the action scenes were all great. What did you guys think of the new main character? What was his name?
Scourge, the bad guy?
No, not the bad guy. The main character,
the human.
Oh, thank you for going there. His name is Noah. I believe now, as a G1 guy, and I use that term a lot. So for Transformers fans that don't know, G1 is short for Generation 1. That is the 1984 cartoon that ran for 4 seasons and had the 1986 animated film. The kid, Noah, in my opinion, I haven't been able to find anything that definitively said this because, like, IMDb didn't go in, but his name was Raul and he's Puerto Rican. There was a Puerto Rican flag in his room. He was in New York City, Brooklyn. There was a character that was a reoccurring human character that was also a Puerto Rican kid in the G1 series that was named Raul. And I got a whole lot of it. Like, his interactions in the cartoon were with a character called Trax that transformed into a Corvette, this blue Corvette. And I got this, I think they kind of did the same thing with Noah and Mirage that they did with Trax and Raul in the comics, comic books too, but in the cartoon. So as soon as I saw him, that's what I got. So it's kind of like they did Sam and Bumblebee in the original movies. That was Spike and Bumblebee, but they gave him the same last name, which was with Wiki. You know what I mean? So I'm definitely, I'd say 99.9% sure that was homage to the original series, and that was one of the things that that really made me like this one too. Whenever they put those homages to the original series, I just lose my shit completely.
Right. And then you have the other kind of main.
The female
character, huh?
The female.
Yes. What was her name again?
I'm looking that one up because I forgot.
Yeah, she's all scientist.
Elena Wallace was her character name.
Right. Okay. I thought they were fun, and they, you know, what'd you think about them just in general? As, you know, how they came into the story and we're helping the Autobots find this. What was it? The key? Some key.
Yeah.
Because, like you said, there's a new villain, and his name is Scourge, and I thought he was really cool, and that is a fucking badass name.
And that's you remember the G1, the 1986 cartoon, right?
Sorta. I haven't watched it in a long time.
All right, well
since I was a kid.
that's where Scourge came from. If you remember when Unicron came and like the Decepticons were beating the hell out of the Autobots, there was that moment where Optimus came in and basically saved the day, like wiped out a whole army of Decepticons.
In the movie?
Yeah. In the animated movie. And then Unicron reformatted all of the Decepticons into new bodies. So Megatron became Galvatron. And like the jets, so like Starscream's jets, Thundercracker, Skywarp, all of them, they became these new characters. It was Scourge and his sweeps. And that's where Scourge came from, which was another homage that I loved coming in.
So Scourge is Starscream?
No, but he was one of the jets.
Oh, okay.
Not Starscream, because they never 100% killed Starscream. Even when they destroyed his body, he was still a ghost. But he was one of those F-15
I thought
jets.
Galvatron killed him.
He did, but in season 4, his ghost came back. Like they couldn't destroy his spark, so he could take over other Transformers' bodies, and then he got his body back.
Oh, that's pretty cool.
Yeah. But yeah, I love Scourge.
So they had some continuity to the show, because I mean, the way I pictured it feels like it would be very episodic,
right?
And just kind of the problem of the week. You know what I mean?
Right.
But is that how it is, or is it
no,
just
definitely
kind of an
not.
ongoing...
I think, well, anytime you have any of these comic book stories, you know what I mean, in cartoons, they're all episodic. Like, you know, no characters stay dead, which is why, you know, the MCU has done so well with that. They pick and choose who they kill off, and they have a tendency to stay dead, which I kind of like that. It adds a certain level of realism. But I think they've done this particular movie of Transformers, I think did a very good job. And although they called it Rise of the Beast, it did have a tie-in to Beast Wars. And I think the one thing that they took away from Beast Wars was it had a much smaller cast than the regular Transformers. There were like 4 Terracons, and then there were like 4 Maximals. And then you had a couple of of the regular Autobots thrown in.
And you weren't really seeing them a lot during the movie either.
Not at first. Well, actually, I like how they did the intro. Like, they did a really good job with making, like, if you knew nothing about Transformers or Beast Wars, like, you didn't have to watch any of the cartoons to know what was going on. You could follow this story very well.
I was thinking that. I was like, I wonder what, like, I'm missing here. Like, how much of this is, you know, accurate to what happened in the cartoons, or if they're just, you know?
Yeah, like I said, there was a lot of homage. And that's one of the things that I think, that's why I give this one such high marks, because I think it was something that they didn't always do well in the other Transformers films, and it pissed off a lot of the, you know, the hardcore older fans. They were like, oh, they're changing this, they're changing this, they're changing this. And I think they did a whole lot of drawbacks. There were a whole lot of Easter eggs, and even though they did change some things, I think they did it well enough where, you know, a new audience will like it and the old audience will like it.
I liked that Unicron looked basically like he did in the movie.
Yeah, definitely.
Like the animated movie. I mean, I keep saying the movie, but Bill still hasn't watched that one. You should watch that, like, after seeing this, Bill.
The 82.
Yeah, 86.
86.
You should watch that movie.
I'm pretty sure I saw it when it came out, but because everything that you've talked about, I remember. But yeah, give me a copy.
I will. Yeah, I have.
DJ Nike.
Every time that has come out, I've bought a new one. So yeah, I have plenty. The one thing that made me, and shout out to Lonely Island, the rap group, comedic rap group that made me jizz in my pants early on.
I fucking love Andy Samberg,
right?
Bro.
There was a part, like, the one thing that the G1 fans were pissed about was that Mirage turned into a Porsche 911 instead of the car that he turned into in a cartoon, which was a Formula One racer. And there was a point after, you know, he took Raul back to the base and he met Optimus and RC and Bumblebee. And he was talking about, you know, if you help us out, I'll let you have me, you know, my car version, and you can sell it, whatever, what have you. And then he turned into like 4 different cars.
Didn't he still? He still had like the racing stripes and the numbers, so he was a race car still.
Yes, but Jazz was the actual
But he was a
alternate mode.
Porsche.
Yeah, Jazz was a Porsche in the original one. So when he said, you know, I can be whatever car you want, he turned into the Formula One racer that actually Mirage is his toy.
And a dump truck.
The dump truck, which that's one of my problems why I don't give it a 10, but we'll get into that later. But he also turned into a Lamborghini Countach, which were the twins, Sideswipe and Sunstreaker. So there was that homage where you could see, you know, a bunch of different G1 characters, their alternate modes. And it was like 5 seconds. And that was a really big deal for me because it was like, okay, there's the drawback to the original right there. And that meant a lot to me.
I didn't like the fact that he turned into the garbage truck either, because I was like, how did he get
big
so
enough?
Much more?
Yes.
How did he get, like, what the fuck? How did he get bigger?
Yeah, that was my one problem. Well, not one problem. That's one of my one problems because they never really explained that. Because if we're going off the other, even though Michael Bay didn't write this one, and technically he didn't direct it either, he was just producer, you still know he had something to do. Like his fingerprint was on it, just like on Bumblebee too. He had a little fingerprint on it. And I think they should have said something about it, made Optimus do it. Because the one thing about these films is the Transformers could turn into whatever they wanted to as long as it was close to their mass.
Right, and fucking Optimus would have made way more sense for that.
Exactly. So yeah, I had that.
He's way bigger.
Yeah, he's already a truck. Yeah, so that would have made sense.
Did they ever explain why, like, some are bigger than others? What's that all about? Like, why are some of them super tiny and some of them are, like, you know, like they seem to vary in size, and then
there's a reason for that. It's because each
seem to be bigger than all of them.
Transformers aren't born like humans, even though, you know, they're technically alive, they're sentient creatures. Each one had a purpose. So because they each had purposes, whether it was something menial like cleaning up their Cybertron, each Transformer had a purpose on their home world. And, you know, size dictated what their job was, which is why
you were made for your job.
Yeah, which is why the Decepticons were more badass, because they were the soldiers that protected the planet, and the Autobots were, you know, like service workers and scientists and shit. So of course, you know, they weren't made to be fighters.
Bro, I never knew that.
Yeah, there you go.
A little bit of fucking history of some Transformers history. So, like, what went down? Like, so, well, you know, obviously you know what the fuck. So,
right.
Like, in the beginning, like, what happened to bring the Transformers in Generation 1? What happened that brought them to Earth and all that?
Megatron and Optimus, they were friends.
What started the war?
Megatron and Optimus were friends. So the leader of the Autobots and the leader of the Decepticons were friends. And like I said, the Decepticons were the military backing and the Autobots were the service workers. But at some point, Megatron was like, well, it's my army that's protecting the planet, so why should I not rule? It was like the Autobots had kind of favor for, you know, keeping the planet whole, and he didn't like that.
Is king.
Yeah. So he kind of, you know, Megatron was just like, well, I'm the fighter. I'm protecting all y'all. I should lead. And that caused that civil war. And, you know, that war raged on for millions of years because they lived longer than us, and they completely dilapidated their energy source. So like if we destroyed Earth and we couldn't, you know, grow food, so we wouldn't have anything to, you know, power ourselves. So they you know, they were looking for a new energy source, and that's how they ended up on Earth. The Autobots were looking for a new energy source. The Decepticons followed them, and they both crash landed.
And this is the story that they worked out back in the day.
Yeah, and we've seen. I mean, like they've talked about it in the live action films. They haven't always done a great job of it, but that's always been a thing. And like even with
they did a decent job at the beginning of this one.
Mm-hmm.
Or well,
wasn't there some in the last night too?
Okay, and here's another thing.
The last night did it good. That's the only thing that was good about that.
Facts.
So speaking of the fucking Beast Wars ones, what are they again?
Maximals and Predacons.
Maximals, Maximize.
Yeah.
Okay, the Maximals. So they're time travelers, right?
Yeah. They're descendants. So the Maximals are descendants of the Autobots, and the Terracons.
He said he was named after Optimus Prime, and I was like, wait a minute. I thought these dudes were from like the past, but the way they were talking, they're from the future.
They are. Now, excuse me. This is where if you'd seen Beast Wars, this makes more sense. This is why I went back and watched it, because Beast Wars came out like in the late 90s, whereas the original Transformers came out in 84. So there was a big difference in them. But basically, the Maximals and Predacons also went to Earth, but it was like, remember I told you the Autobots and Decepticons crashed on Earth? Well, they were in stasis. So they weren't alive, you know what I mean? They were like in the stasis pods. And
they're in sleep mode.
Yeah. And that's when all of the animal-based Transformers crashed on Earth. And the reason they have animal bodies or alternate forms instead of like cars and shit, because they crashed on Earth in prehistoric times. But there was so much energon, which is what they eat. That's what fuels them. There was so much energon in its raw form on Earth that they couldn't stay in their robot modes. It was destroying them. So they had to find these, what are they called? Humans, you know what I mean? These biometric bodies. So they couldn't stay in their robot modes for long or they'd shut down. So that's why.
What do you mean? Aren't they still robots when they transform? I don't get that.
In the cartoon, they looked more, when they transformed into their animal modes, they looked like the animals. And they were a lot smaller than the Transformers. So if you ever get a chance to watch Beast Wars.
That makes it a little confusing because they still look like robots.
Yeah, in this one. And I get it, you know what I mean? Like they changed the story somewhat to make it more believable. Yeah, because I mean, you got to think there's a lot of things that work for cartoons that don't work for live action. If you have a robot turning into an ape, in real life you'd still have to see robot parts. In the cartoon, when they turned into like,
which is why I didn't like Optimus's face. Like when he didn't have the face shield on, that look has always bugged me.
I'm glad you brought that up because that's something I forgot about. Do you know what his face is based off of?
No.
Peter Cullen, the guy that voices him. So without the mask, that's he's supposed to look like the guy that voices him. They did that on purpose. But
no, I think Bill means like how fake and cartoony it looks,
or just not even just fake or whatever. It's like supposed to be human, but supposed to be robot, but it never translated well.
Yeah.
I mean, it still looked like pieces of metal kind of making a face, but it like aesthetically didn't satisfy.
Them. Yeah, that was them doing something for, you know what I mean, for something they could say, because I didn't notice. Like, I know what Peter Cullen looks like, and after I read it, I was like, oh yeah, it does kind of look like him.
But I wouldn't know what the hell to put there anyways. Like if I was to draw it, I wouldn't know where to begin. So it's like it's weird that it bothers me, but I don't know. I don't have anything to base it on either. Right? It's like it just looks weird.
Yeah.
I always thought it looked a little weird too, but maybe it's for different reasons. I always thought it looked a little. I get what they're doing. They're trying to make it look as much like the old cartoon as possible. And
but he never had a face. He never had a face in the cartoon. He always had that mask
too.
Yeah, I think that was it. He never had the face in the cartoon. It was always, his mask that moved up and down instead of him having lips.
It's true.
So
maybe that's why, because they're inventing it, and it's like,
yeah, you didn't have to change that.
But they did it with all of them.
That is a little weird detail. Like they didn't have to show his face ever.
Yeah, they didn't. That again, that's something they tried to do.
So there's one thing that
make it more relatable that way.
Maybe.
They're like making him more human. And I was watching some reviews on the movie on the YouTube, and it brought up an interesting point that they didn't really think that the human element was actually necessary to tell the story of the Transformers, and that
this time around.
Any of them, because the cartoon was really just the humans were really secondary.
You know what's funny is I fucking was thinking that like the entire time I was watching this, and in a lot of them they're like
all of them really. There's
all of them, literally
for whatever
all of them.
reason they need like these humans, but really would they really need us? Probably fucking not.
No, they wouldn't. I think
like,
they do that. They do that for the live
fucking keys without that chick. Like they can't figure that the fuck out.
And the human-sized portal that they have to crawl through.
They fly across the universe and shit, but they can't.
I think they're scared to do the Transformers films without having a human element. Like that's always been what I've thought, and I think because you get onto that realism thing, it's very hard to watch a complete CGI film with nothing to base it off of. You know what I mean? If you don't have the humans to scale what the robots look like, and for real, I've heard that since the very first one.
You can have humans in it, just you don't need ones that are in the main story.
But think about that. Now think about this from a fictional thing. Now, if you're a kid and you're not a Transformers fan at all, and you're seeing this for the first time, and you don't see anything human in it at all, by having these human characters, that gives you something to, I can feel, I have feelings as a person. Yeah. And I think that's why they do it. You know what I mean?
Yeah, but it's easier to sell to the non-nerd fans too.
By the time we get to the end,
and it helps sell to the non-nerd fans too.
Mm-hmm.
So I mean, we're a class in our own. Pushing up my glasses. So I mean, but when we're very critical, and you know, I'm a lot more passive Transformer fan than you are. I definitely watched the show. It had the toys. You know, it was part of my youth.
Mm-hmm.
So it definitely resides in that kind of area, and it's entertaining films. And I definitely think these last two, Bumblebee, are moving in the right direction and felt much more entertaining. And they did the human element well.
Agreed.
You know.
Well, here's what can you guys hear me good?
Yeah.
Because it was cutting out real bad for a second.
It's the crosstalk that'll screw you up. When we're all talking at the same time.
Yeah.
Like right now, like what I'm doing to you right now. I'll shut up.
Whenever you're ready. Okay. But I think Sean, you especially should be excited with the human element, just based on what happens in the mid-credit scene.
All right.
Or no, it's the very end of the movie.
Yeah. Hold on before we get to that one.
You know what I'm talking about.
Yes, I do.
Though.
We're gonna get to that one. Before we.
We won't get quite yet, but I'm just saying I think, you know, having the human element, it makes sense to me.
Right.
It does make it a little more relatable. I mean, but you could do it in different ways. You don't have to have like two people that have to be there or the mission fails.
Maybe. You know what? I understand both sides. I see why they do it, and I would appreciate if they didn't, but I'm not going to. That's one of those things that I think is very nitpicky, because there have always been humans from the jump in the Transformers lore. Again, whether it was Spike, his father, Sparkplug, Raul with Trax, who Noah, you know what I'm saying, who I think Noah was based off. There have always been humans, or even sometimes in the latter series where there were like even human like aliens, you know what I mean? So there have always been an element, whether it was in the comic books or the cartoon. So I'm not going to be one of those ones. Like, yeah, I would love to see a film where it was mostly the Transformers, but Michael Bay said, I saw this on the extra features in some of the first films, where he was talking about if he would have done it that way, you get a very Power Rangers cartoony-esque film, and people won't take it serious. And I understand that. You know what I mean?
That's a valid.
That makes sense.
Especially to sell to somebody who's going to give you money to shell out millions of dollars to film.
Facts. And we're talking hundreds of millions too.
Yes, I get that. Yeah.
So yeah, you have to have something that's going to give the everyday person, whether it's a guy or a girl, like you have to do a kid, an adult, you have to put something in, a little bit of sustenance other than what the hardcore fans want. Because the hardcore fans aren't going to be the ones that's going to bring you most of your money. You know what I mean? If you're trying to make a successful franchise that's been 40 years in the making and bring new fans in, you have to do certain things. And I've always been down with that.
proves that.
There you go.
Yeah, absolutely.
Like you have to have the support of like the casual fans too, or your shit will fail, or it won't be as big as you, or as big or look as good as you want it to.
Exactly. And honestly, I do think you get a lot more of those emotions from the human characters. Like I know, I guess we're far enough in now. We could talk about the fact that they killed Bumblebee in this one for a minute.
Yeah, this movie, I feel like they looked at the 1986 movie,
mm-hmm.
the animated movie,
right,
and then kind of rewrote that story a little bit. It was
100%.
It was almost the same story. I mean, it was a lot different in areas, but you know what I mean? Instead of killing Optimus at the beginning of this, they kill Bumblebee. And
Right.
that was really fucking sad, by the way.
You know
Yeah,
what? You know why I'm going to say it's not? This is, I knew from Jump Street Bumblebee wasn't going to stay dead. And
Well,
this was only from watching the trailer. And I could have been wrong, but I'd watched the trailer so many times for Rise of the Beast that most of what we saw in the trailers was in like the first 30 minutes of the film. And I like when they do that because you don't get a bunch of spoilers. You know what I mean? It's like, oh, okay, good. You know, Guardians of the Galaxy did that. A lot of what was in the trailer was in like the first 15, 20 minutes of the film.
30 seconds.
Yeah. And then we had no idea what was going to happen in that film.
They made you think a whole different movie was going to happen.
Yeah. Like, you know what I mean? From the trailer, you thought they were going to possibly kill Quill. You know what I mean?
And Rocket.
And that didn't happen. So from the trailer for this film, most of the shit we saw, like the funny interactions with Mirage, and I like how they, even though they changed his alternate mode, you know, we still got to see his power. Like this is what I like about Transformers 2, to make them feel more human. They're almost like mutants of the robot world. Each Transformer has a power. You know what I mean?
Special ability.
Yeah, each one. So Mirage is that he can make mirages. He can make holograms. And, you know, I mean, all that shit we saw, and it was funny in the trailer, but it really didn't go and give away any of the story. But the one thing I did notice was that they showed Bumblebee jumping out of a plane, and then we got to see that plane.
That's the part I was talking about when.
So yeah, I knew he was going to come back.
The best part about that is them playing some LL Cool J. Don't call it a comeback.
Oh, by the way, thank you for mentioning that, because that was something I forgot. And I'm also glad I mentioned Guardians. This film had an awesome hip hop based soundtrack,
era specific. Correct.
Very. Yes.
I mean, and that's there's an O.J. Simpson. It was in there. When he was in the high speed chase, the low speed chase, that was there. So there's real things that
a lot to
those
make
details.
sure that we knew it was the 90s. You know, you didn't want to
even seeing
to forget what year it was.
Yeah, like you could even they put the I don't know if it was old footage of New York City or if they digitally put the Twin Towers back.
There, yeah.
They were very prominent when they were in New York, that you could see the Twin Towers, and that meant a lot to me.
For a long time, people wouldn't even try to fuck with that or do that at all.
True.
Mm-hmm. And I really liked that they did that. That was very awesome.
Yeah, they did. Yeah, they did a great job at that.
Like exactly what year you're in. You know what I mean? And
right.
Like I said, they kept making sure, down to the main character's shoes.
Yeah,
that you knew what year it was.
Yeah, shoes, the Game Boy.
Appreciated that because
the OJ
from the 90s and shit.
The OJ trace gives you an exact day and time.
Times for sure.
Yeah.
Yeah. The OJ chase gives you an exact day and time of when that happens in real life.
I was in boot camp for that, so I can tell you it was between May and August of 1995. I don't remember the exact day, but I remember I was in boot camp, Marine Corps boot camp, for the OJ chase. And I remember we were listening to it on the radio in a Humvee, and we were on the top of a mountain, and we were doing a little fake war thing against another unit, and we were waiting to hear the verdict. And as soon as we heard the verdict, RCO was like, "Storm the mountain," and I ended up running through a cactus and thought I was hard, and my fucking leg went numb, but I will always remember that, you know what I mean? So it was definitely a period piece. There were so many different things that drew back. You saw things like Game Boys, VCRs,
down to the walkie-talkie him and his little brother used.
Mm-hmm. Like, and those were all things I had as a kid. So that I love that movie. I loved it so much because of things like that.
It was a really solid movie. And then that, like, before we get too far away from the Bumblebee jumping out of the plane, I think as far as action sequences went, that was one of the very best.
Oh yeah.
Just him. It was reminiscent of, in the old school one when like you keep you talk about a lot when Prime.
Oh yeah.
Optimus Prime comes in and wipes out a bunch of Decepticons with
Right.
these.
Mm-hmm.
And that's what happens there with Bumblebee. He just dives out of the plane and just starts
Whipping ass.
just taking shit. Yeah, just fucking kicking ass. And I remembered while I was watching that part, you talking about him being a badass, and I was like, yeah, they made him like extra badass in this.
Because they had to, make his screen time count because he was dead or comatose most of the movie.
Yeah.
I thought it was a little cheesy how it kind of came back. I mean, it's just like all of a sudden this wave of the energy comes through.
But see,
it made sense because it was when like they dropped all the drones, so that had to power like the drones that were coming in. But it was like a little convenient writing.
It was, but it falls back to the lore. So like I said, that was another one of those homage spots that felt real. And like when they in the 86 animated film, when they killed Prime, they brought him back later.
So that movie.
Yeah. So there was a whole lot of stuff that did tie back. It tied back into Beast Wars with it being this raw energon. There were so many different things that tied back that made me very happy. I think one of the things that really popped into my head early was the fan service from Across the Spider-Verse, the new Spider-Man movie, and No Way Home. Like they did so much of the fan service, and I think this one did that. Probably in a better way than any of the Transformers movies ever has before. There was way more Easter eggs and way more fan service in this one. Which
I could feel that. I could tell there was a lot going on with that. I mean, I wasn't able to pick out as many as like somebody like you would.
Right.
But I had a feeling there was a lot of Easter egg stuff happening, and that they tried to be more lore accurate with this movie.
Right.
And that's always appreciated. I always like that. And I think a lot of people do.
Right.
Is just having accurate to the lore as possible. You know what I mean?
Yeah, and even if some things are changed, to have those little drawbacks make folks like me happy. Like, okay, they changed this, but okay, I can see where where they got it from. They didn't completely forget about us, and you know what I mean. That for real, that fan service. I was in my seat happy. I felt like a little kid. You know what I mean? Which I didn't feel like. The only time I felt like that in the original Transformers ones, like the first Michael Bay film. Remember when the helicopter transformed the first time on the military base? And it made the cartoon transformation. That was one of those moments. And then like when Bumblebee as a Camaro used his car door and knocked the Volkswagen Bug out of the way. There were little small ones like that in the first film, but there were a lot of them in this one. And I think that needs to happen. You know what I mean? Like a new fan wouldn't notice. But somebody like me that would be taking his kids.
It's not for them. It's not for them anyway. You know what I mean?
Yep.
All the other stuff is for the casual fan.
Right. So yeah, give us hardcore fans something.
Service is so important and shit like this is because that way you're like appeasing everyone.
Facts. I agree.
And there's nothing wrong with that. Like you definitely want to, like the whole reason this movie's being made is because of the hardcore fan, right?
Right. Well, I mean, to make money. It's all to make money.
But also they want to attract like the new audience. So, because the whole reason it's popular is because of the hardcore fan.
Facts. Yeah, you got to think the Transformers franchise has been around since 1984. We're almost to 2024. That is a long time to keep a franchise alive.
Yeah, and it is. Yeah. It is a franchise. I mean, there's a lot that goes into keeping that and maintaining.
And shows like this were made to sell toys when it came down to it.
Thank you. Yes, the cartoons were a 22-minute commercial to sell toys. Thank you for saying. Yeah,
that goes for Ninja Turtles, for He-Man, for
G.I. Joe.
And speaking of G.I. Joe,
thank you. Yo, go ahead.
Before we get into that, though, so by the end of the movie, when they're having that kind of final battle with Scourge, and
curveballed on us.
Huh?
We thought you were going to go into G.I. Joe.
No, well, I was going to.
You're going the long way there.
I want to talk about why that happens first.
Okay.
Because the main character, I keep forgetting it, Noah.
Noah, yeah.
He, Mirage kind of this is one of the parts that really choked me up was when Mirage like told him like go ahead take like you got to go do that. He's
Use
like
my
I'll
body
hold him
parts
off or whatever.
and that
And he's like and you knew he was gonna go get fucked up and like he gets his ass beaten, almost killed.
right.
And then he becomes and this was maybe my favorite part of the whole movie
Mm-hmm.
when he's like, I'm still alive, but I need you to drive.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Fucking became like an exosuit for Noah, and I thought that was the fucking dopest shit. Like, seriously, this is why I'm like on the fence about the human element thing,
Mm-hmm.
because when done correctly and in a great way, like they did there, where they kind of merged the two, he became like their equal and was able to battle alongside Prime and Bumblebee against Scourge, and that shit was so fucking tight.
And this is why I scored this movie so high. That comes from the cartoon and the comic books too, where there was a point
Headmasters.
the headmasters and target masters.
That's the fucking weirdest name ever.
They were, but it was another thing to sell toys. So the Transformers had landed on this alien planet, and they found out that like if they had a human driving, that they were better off, or if there was a human that was in their vehicle mode shooting for them while they were driving, it made them better. So they came out with these exosuits that where a human-like being would either turn into a Transformers weapon.
And you see those in the 1986 movie as well.
They weren't in the movie, but they were in the fourth season. It wasn't in the movie. It was in the fourth season. We saw the exosuits, but not where they turned. Yeah,
but maybe it was a different suit. Maybe I'm thinking of.
Yes,
but the father and son duo have them in the movie.
Yes, Spike and Daniel. Yes.
Yeah.
So these that's something for the lore. So again, in the comic books and the cartoons, these exosuits would turn into either a Transformers weapon, so like their gun, or they would turn into their head in robot mode. And that was a big homage to that. So right before Mirage saved Noah and he gave up parts of his body, and he was able to be like this badass exoskeleton that was able to fight, even though he was still basically human size, a little bit bigger than human size. It gave him Mirage's powers and stuff, and that was pretty awesome.
That was a fucking badass scene. I loved every bit of that.
And I'm glad they didn't put that in the trailer, because I was not expecting that at all.
I wasn't either, and I was like, man, that's fucking cool, man. Like, and it reminded me of Iron Man, and like, you know what I mean?
Mm-hmm.
I'm like, this is fucking cool. This reminds me of when I first saw Iron Man, kind of.
Yeah.
And, it's been a long time since Iron Man came out. We won't, as far as we know, ever get Robert Downey Jr. as Iron Man ever again.
Right.
So it kind of felt like that to me. Didn't it feel like that to you?
Yeah, well, like I said, it was more of the me being a hardcore Transformers fan. That was one of the biggest fan service moments.
Your mind is always on like the old school shit.
Yeah, and the fact that happened, oh my goodness, I was in my seat like, oh, yes.
Yeah, it's a solid movie, dude. I liked it, and especially by the end. And
all right, so
I gave it
let's get into that.
Joe, and I didn't expect this.
I didn't either.
To happen.
Let me say this right now: I was wrong. Although I think Hasbro put this out there, or maybe they changed their minds. I don't know.
But this is all like a soft
reboot.
The reboot. So.
All right, so I said in the last all right, maybe. I said in the last Transformers episode we did, the one that just encompassed everything Transformers, I said that Hasbro was talking about doing an MCU-like shared universe with a lot of their former toys and cartoons. So Mask, M-A-S-K-Q, what is it? Mobile Armored Strike Command, Transformers, G.I. Joe, and a couple of their other toys from the 80s. They were going to do a shared universe. And then after the one with like Frankenstein and the other horror films, after that one tanked, After the G.I. Joe movies didn't do what they wanted them to do, they said, nah, we're not doing that anymore. So they've been adamant about saying we're not doing a shared universe anymore. Then we get to the end of Rise of the Beasts, and you have Noah, the main human character, who did have military aspects, which I liked, because that was one of the things that was kind of far out with Spike or Sam. You know what I mean? It was like, all right, you have no fighting experience at all. You were this nerd in school, and now all of a sudden you're saving the world. You know what I mean? Yeah. At least this kid has military experience. I like that. You know, he knows how to fight.
Yeah, right. He was a Marine, right?
I don't remember if they said he was a Marine, but they definitely said he was in the military.
They showed his dog tags.
I think they said he was a Marine.
Yeah, I would think I would have remembered that, but like I said, I was so engrossed and coming all over myself with happiness, I might have missed it. But I do remember they said he was military.
Good detail to put that he was in the military. Didn't he get kicked out for whatever reason?
I don't think he was kicked out. He served 4 years, and they said he wasn't like a team player, and that's why it was hard for him to get a job. You know what I mean? And I get that because not everybody is. You know what I mean? When it comes to military. But anyway, when they get to the second post-credit scene, they show him talking to this guy, and who I thought was Sector 7, because even in Bumblebee, you know, they led up to that whole Sector 7, which was that quasi-government agency from.
Yeah, I thought it was gonna be something like some agent, like Shield or whatever that I didn't know about from Transformers.
And then to find,
they had some, you know, some shit I just didn't know about from the show. But then they're like G.I. Joe. I was like, what the fuck?
Yeah, that one caught me so off guard, and I'm glad. You know what I mean? Like, again, that was another thing I was not expecting. My jaw dropped,
Bill
and I was
you
like,
freaked the fuck out.
I did.
You did.
Oh,
I wish I would have filmed it. If I would have known, I would have.
He said, yeah, you should have seen. That was like one of his selling points for me to go see it.
Yeah.
Was that
he's like, I'm not going to tell you.
There where Sean absolutely lost his shit.
You gotta.
There were 3 times. The 3 times I lost it during that film was when Mirage transformed into the other G1 accurate cars. When Noah got the headmaster suit from Mirage, and then the G.I. Joe thing. Those 3 things were the biggest drawback, and I was so fucking excited. Like, I felt like I was a 10-year-old kid again. You know what I mean? Like, for real. I forgot I was 47 and my 46 and my kids were there with me. I totally, like, that was the coolest experience ever.
Okay. So do you think this is the best live action Transformers you've seen?
Yes. I'm gonna say yes. The reason I said it was second to the first one, because the first one holds a special place in my heart because it was the first live action.
It's nostalgic though.
I waited 20 some odd years.
It's not because it's a better movie than this one, even though I think they're pretty close.
They're very close, and I think what Shia did for that movie for the humans was very well good. Like, he was the perfect actor for that film.
He was awesome.
You know what I mean? And they did a great job with the first one all around. But I think this one, there are certain parts, a lot of parts of this one that make me want to put it slightly above. Now, with all the good things we said, there were some slight problems. A couple of them we mentioned, but there was one, like with the main female character, where after they attacked her at her little museum, and they made it outside, and they were talking to the Autobots and the Maximals, and she was like, well, you guys are Autobots and you guys are Maximals, why blah 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 blah. I hope it's just a deleted scene that, you know, didn't make it into the film, but it was like, how do you know they're Autobots? At this point, like, we humans for the most part didn't know there were Transformers on Earth, let alone know what their factions were called. So that one kind of, you know, that was one of those errors that I didn't like. And there were a couple of little ones in the storyline that I thought could have been easily fixed. That's the only reason I'm not giving it a 10, is because of those little things that I thought could have been fixed.
And him transforming into a vehicle that he shouldn't have been able to.
Nah, I'm going to let that one go. Because like I said, we got the drawback when he turned into the 8. Plus, think about this too. In the Transformers cartoon, there were a lot of things that wouldn't make sense now. Like, you have a cassette tape player that you could carry as a human, but then it turns into a 20-foot.
I was kind of thinking the same thing, as like, maybe they kind of did that on purpose because I
Mhm.
mean you have a couple little things in there.
Yeah, you can't be a
And that's-
Formula One
that in
racer.
itself is a
You can
throwback
see
to the cartoon.
Yeah, you can see that there's not a driver, you know what I mean, in the car. Like even like what like and they did that correct with RC, like which was the female that was a motorcycle. And like whenever she was in her motorcycle mode, she had a hologram of a human driving. You know what I mean? Because you can't be a motorcycle driving around without a human counterpart and nobody question it. You're supposed to be a robot in disguise. You can't be in disguise if you're a vehicle driving with no driver. So
I like that they didn't change RC.
right.
Like they kept a lot of like the great elements about the older movies.
They did. Mm-hmm.
Like Bumblebee looks the same, she looks the same, Optimus looks the same. You know, they didn't change any of that too much, and if they did, I'm not trained enough eye to tell, but
Right.
I do remember she looks. I mean, and I always liked her look, and they even did that in the older movies
Yeah.
where she had the hologram of like, and it's always a chick writer too, like
Yeah.
a female writer.
Mm-hmm.
Bill,
Yes.
before you forget, you had a
So, yeah, I
really
did.
good point, and I think you should take some time and explain what that is. And I'd
And
be
again,
interested to hear Sean's perspective.
and I know you know, Sean and I have had similar kind of conversations about this kind of. But one thing that really bothered me, kind of thinking about the movie afterwards, is that every white character was a complete asshole or not important.
Really? I didn't
I
notice.
mean, and you know, I don't have anything against any of those characters or anything, but you know, there wasn't much there. I just would have want like one intern to be, you know, at the museum being like, God, that little woman's a bitch, you know, or whatever. There's just something to. They were either cops or they were complete dicks, or there was no real point to them. Even looking on IMDb, there wasn't any
the
new
GI Joe guy at the end,
But that wasn't you know, post
but
credit
it goes
scenes.
down with like cop.
Yeah.
And I think that would be more of on the positive side, but it wasn't until then, you know, and everybody, and I think, yes, there is a point where that story needs to be told, you know, I imagine, you know, any woman or anybody in that field could be totally taken advantage of. And I imagine that has happened in many different ways, you know,
Especially
thousands
in
of
the
times.
90s and before.
And,
Yeah.
you know, especially that era, and you know, and kind of the things being, you know, the insurance and just being, you know, underclass and getting fucked over by it is a real thing. And I'm not trying to undermine any of that, but I think as the director goes, you know, how, you know, that's a slippery slope, I think. And I'm just coming from a place of balance, is that it you know, it made me go,
You know what? Like, I'm not white, so I would. That's why I totally didn't notice that. You know what I mean? And you know what? You're thinking
I didn't
back.
notice it either. You know what it is?
Yeah. And you know what?
Bill, do you know what it is?
What?
It Bill's racist.
Oh, shut up.
But I
I'm
mean,
just kidding. Anyway, go ahead.
I mean, because really there was the bitchy, you know, science lady that kind of stole her credit for her stuff.
Facts, yeah.
And everybody else was just kind of, you know, and I think those two actors and actress, were solid. They were top of the line actors. They did the role justice to, you know, to the point. And they played that role.
Trying to think of where I've seen the female character, the black chick.
She's been in a lot of shit. I had to IMDb.
Was she in Ready Player One?
Hold on, because I have it up. No, that's not her.
But I think overall is,
I'm trying to think of where I've seen her before.
Oh shit!
And real quick, while you're looking that up, just kind of finish that note. When I think it's very important when we're starting to talk about race relations, to be able to have that open discussion about it. Like, I know you and I have had this kind of in many different levels before. So, but to somebody who doesn't kind of know it, I think we, at a certain point in time, if we're ever going to progress, we've got to stop and take our own actions accountability, and also being open to criticism on every level.
I agree, because honestly, until you said it, I didn't notice.
My only thing I would say in like defense of white people only being in like that villainous role or whatever. It's like I'm sure black people, other minorities throughout time watching movies that are completely whitewashed and shit.
True.
Yeah.
And they're thinking the same thing.
So now,
You know what I mean?
If that was the point the director was trying to make,
Exactly.
bravo. I mean, if it was unintentional, or maybe something was lost in I don't know. But to your point, that's very true. I mean, for decades,
Yeah, almost 100 years, if
it's
not.
probably not even still happening today.
Yeah.
Right.
But again, I think that's why it's important to kind of bring up those conversations. Also, one thing we've kind of been battering around for, show ideas to talk about, equality, or, even kind of, I hate when you call it, the woke kind of thing. Cause I think that in itself, by calling that, puts judgment both pro and negative onto it. Usually it's like a kind of bullshit. Like, I didn't want to call this movie woke at all. I mean, I think, if you're trying to demean it,
like shoving it down your throat, like Sean said, he didn't even notice. And I honestly didn't either. I kind of didn't notice until you pointed it out to me, and then I was like, oh yeah, like that is like that kind of.
And it was also after they were talking about, were the human element that important, and then bringing that in, and then I was looking on IMDb, and I'm like, wait a minute, it's like there really wasn't. It was kind of looking back at it. But then there's been other movies or shows. I want to bring you to example that had a almost complete black cast, and they didn't draw attention to it in that kind of way. They were able to tell their story about the race relations without the same kind of feel. There was the Lovecraft Country, which was an all black cast. Other than they had some evil kind of witches that were, white racist cops too. But it had that juxtaposition and that realness to it. And that was the point of the story, where it didn't bother me as much rather than under the big blockbuster.
Now, you know what? I'm glad you brought up that show. I haven't watched it yet.
And it's our boy who's
Kang. Jonathan Majors is in
it.
And that is on my list of things to watch. I didn't watch it originally because I knew the history behind H.P. Lovecraft. You know what I mean? And he was known to have very openly racist tendencies. So after reading up on the story, the fact that they took it that direction in and of itself was groundbreaking. You know what I mean? You take a racist storyline and then you use it, you know what I mean, in a positive way. I think
they did it like they have flipped it against him.
Yeah. So that is definitely something that I do want to check out, and props for bringing it up. But yeah, you know what I mean? Now that you mentioned it, it does, and I can see that.
And another one, and I kind of felt the same thing for a while, and I didn't really know why until I looked back at it, was Luke Cage. I loved it, but like the first few seasons, it was, huge, major black stars from across, the whole spectrum, in amazing performances, historical references, great music references. The whole
it makes a lot more sense than Luke Cage, though.
Because Luke Cage takes place in Harlem, which is one of those spots that were on the top level for it was called the Harlem Renaissance. You know what I mean? That was
Luke Cage's story is a black story. Though. You know what I mean?
Exactly.
Like, it's not.
And I've said this on this show before. Luke Cage was the first African American comic book character that spoke to me. Like, Falcon was cheesy in the comic books. Storm was dope, but she was African. Black Panther was dope, but he was African. I also thought he was drawn very sorry, you know what I mean, for that time frame, you know what I mean? Yeah. Luke Cage was
just a silhouette with eyes.
Yeah, Luke Cage was the first African American character that spoke to me. He was super strong, he was bulletproof, and he was doing things in the hood to help the hood, not more of like, saving the world type of shit. Like
aliens.
Yeah. The very first time I read Luke Cage, I fell in love with that character. That's who I wanted to be. Those were powers that I'd be like, yo, I was living in Flint, Michigan, where drive-bys were happening almost every day. It's like, yo, if I could pick up a car and throw it easily and be bulletproof, those are powers that a black kid growing up in the inner city would love to have. And so,
well, and not only that, like we've talked about, like if with Spider-Man, for example, how uh, when you are able to relate to that character, and everybody can relate to Spider-Man, and it seems that's the case because I mean he's the biggest superhero
in
on
the
the
world,
planet.
right?
But it's like that relatability, the things that make him so you can be like, oh, I've gone through that before, or like I totally get like what he's going through, type shit. And that makes it even better. And that's kind of what you're talking about with Luke Cage as like a black kid growing up, and he's dealing with stuff that you like understand, and you're like, oh, I've like seen that before.
Right.
You know what I mean?
Right.
It's not necessarily you relate to him, but it's the situations too.
I will bring
like
up
the
this
things
point.
tackling like real issues.
Right.
And then you're like, oh, I can totally relate to that. That happened down the street or whatever. You know what I mean?
Right. Since you pointed out the thing that most of the white characters in that film were very villainous in nature, it's worth noting that the director, his name is Stephen Capo Jr., is black. So yeah. I would guesstimate that was on purpose. And that was something that I didn't notice. You know what I mean? You know what I mean? I noticed you had a Puerto Rican, main character, another black character. I would probably, especially looking at his age and that he's just barely younger than us, so probably closer to Mike's age, in the mid-30s range. So he was alive in that era.
Right.
I can see, you know what I mean, that was probably done intentionally. You know what I mean? And not saying that all white people are evil. I don't think that's what he was saying.
Because we've all been saying like,
and we were all alive in the 90s too. It was a much different time. You know what I mean? Like it's hilarious to me. Like before I came here,
they were like just straight shitting on white people and just being like,
but see, that's so that's the thing.
Then I'd probably be like, oh, this is kind of not good.
But that's what I think. To me, after thinking about it, made it a little bit worse. Is that they didn't say it; they showed it.
But I think, but like I said, I mean, looking at it now, these weren't like your regular people. Like, and when I say regular people, they were all people in a position of power that were shitting on
like in that with the the bitchy
museum curator, like
that fit. I mean, and I think wasn't that Agatha of what's her name? In Marvel?
No, she looked like her. It's not her.
But I mean, that made sense. But it's just like I wanted a little bit of the contrast there, just a little, one line.
Well, and think about this. There are very
one token dumb white guy that's comedic relief.
There's like a handful of characters that are human in that movie that get a significant amount of screen time.
Right. But yeah, but I mean, like I said, now
even her boss,
right?
The white chick, you didn't see her, but for what, maybe 5-10 minutes?
But
like, you know what I mean?
Like
so
15 seconds.
Like,
yeah.
For the most part, you had a very small cast in this movie.
But I'm seeing, like I said, now that he said it, I do get it too. Because when you think about the white guy when Noah went to the job interview. You know what I mean? It was another white guy with a position of power that was shitting on him. He was like, yo, I talked to your XO and you said you weren't a team player, so you can't get a job here. So thinking about it, every white person in this film had a negative connotation to him.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? Now, again, they were people of power, so it wasn't like you just had a regular white guy on the street that they were interacting with.
But I think that would have been the contrast that, to kind of see that it was a little bit different. And I just think... as far as we're talking racial relations, there's a responsibility to kind of show both sides.
The stuff that Noah was going through and like the story they were telling with like their struggle and like putting a white person in that position to maybe not even, it's like just to be dismissive with them and not even consider that they have a better set of skills or whatever. You know what I mean? Like it is. I mean, maybe they're just trying to tell a story of what it's like to be in that position where it's like maybe a white person might not think they're being shitty or whatever, but it's just like that dismissiveness or
fucking
whatever.
crackers.
You know what I mean? Like I can understand from the outside looking in. You know what I mean? I see that now. But I also grew up in an era where you know what I mean, there wasn't a really good depiction. Like I think I told you, I got in it wasn't an argument because we were very cordial to each other about it. But I was speaking with one of my white female friends. It's about my age that has children, all white children, that she felt like they were shitting on redheads because it seems like Disney has replaced a lot of their redhead princesses with different minority characters in the live action versions. And while I understood what she was saying,
specifically Little Mermaid,
that was the new one, but like she gave 5, like, because I told her, I was like, all right, that was once. I was like, give me 4 other instances where this happened, and she did. And I was still like, all right, so you're giving me 5 out of hundreds of thousands of characters over the last 125 years of cinema and TV. I was like, I get it. I was like, but you have to be very careful how you tell your children that. I was like, because potentially if you don't word it correctly, you could be creating racists in the future. You know what I mean? Like, I understand if I was a redheaded white kid and I saw a black kid playing a real black, I was like, but we're also talking about fictional characters too. You know what I mean? I was like, when you
Didn't
think
they do it with like Annie?
Yeah. But like
It was the original Annie white redhead.
Yes.
In the book?
Yeah.
Yeah.
In the play?
Yeah. So yeah, that was her second one. You know what I mean? Like, so I get it and I understand. I was like, but you still like, there's and this is what I told her. I was like, I was like, yes, you should bring it up with your child brought it up to you. So here's how you need to show them. I was like, turn on your TV, whether it's cable or a streaming service, and start flipping through shows and TVs. And like, all right, how many white people do you see on these shows? I was like, if there is more than 50%, and I would probably say it's 75 to 80% still white. I was like, if you show them that this is the way it is, you're seeing now.
It just seems like really people freak out when it's like a character that everybody knows.
But here's my big point when I'm talking about that. We talk about all the times that they're like, think about even the first 5 Transformers movies. The main protagonist was white, whether it was Shia LaBeouf's character or Mark Wahlberg's character. You know what I mean? We're on the 7th. On the 7th Transformers movie.
Agree, and I think this is why I wouldn't be upset if they did like a black James Bond.
No, I think they would. I wouldn't be. I think that would be if they got the right guy. They could totally pull it off.
But that's what I'm saying. Like, I think these conversations need
and like canon. You could make all the movies canon in the lore of James Bond if you just mention in one of the movies that the designation
is a rank
007. When you take that number, you have to take the title James Bond. That's
Facts.
not your actual name.
Yeah, it's a rank.
But well, not a rank, but like just when you take that position, it's like the Red Hood.
Yeah, it's
like
still
how
rank.
many people have been the Red Hood, but it's always the Red Hood, but it's different people.
Facts. And you know what? Like the one thing that I always choose to use as an example whenever we go through this, and there's 2 of them, I always say, look at all of the different actors that have played, actresses that have played Cleopatra. Look at all of the different actors that have played Jesus. You know what I mean? And I'm not trying to say Jesus was black, but if you were to go to Jerusalem, he doesn't look like
he ain't white.
Yeah.
There you go.
No.
That's for damn sure.
You know what I mean? And I think that is a very dangerous precedent, you know what I mean, when you start doing things like that. Because you think about
I think if done right, and you don't need, by the way, to like change one of these characters, you don't need to necessarily shit on anyone.
True.
Like we kind of this one, it kind of feels that way because every white character is like a prick.
Right.
An oppressor.
If done, you could do it with like James Bond again, like for example, where like this new guy could get designated as the new James Bond, and that's when they explain that it's a designation. And then you could do like a reel as they talk about his new position. And then they could show the older Bonds, like pictures of each of them.
Right. Well, even think about this. I think that's a good idea.
Like distinguish them in the speech, so you're not like shitting on them.
Yeah.
And be like, you know what I mean?
Yeah, and show each one.
Start writing the
path.
script.
Yeah, you're right, for real.
Start writing the script.
Yeah.
You got it.
The
comic.
one thing I would point out. Oh, please don't tell me I lost it. Damn, I lost it. Fuck. If I remember, we'll get back to it. I lost it. My bad.
But
It's
I mean,
all gonna do it,
and
like,
bringing
once
up
an episode.
I know that was the first time it happened to me.
and for me, kind of bringing up the race relations things, I don't think it didn't take away from me in the movie experience. I still recommend it as a good watch, if you're wanting a good action movie. But I think it's just important to note whether
I think it was
and
a
whether
good point
that's
to bring up, dude. Like, honestly,
whether that was the intent to poke me. I don't want to call it poke the bear. I'm not a bear, but to bring that up into conversations, I think that it was a good thing. But it does send an eye for an eye doesn't make society blind. I mean, and that's just my only kind of footnote on that subject.
And I'm glad you mentioned that, because when you think of movies like Black Panther, both of them, you know what I mean? Where
power,
where you have a very a predominantly black cast in prominent roles, but I think about that, and you still have the one character, the white dude from the fucking Harry Potter movies or whatever.
I know who you're talking about, but
yeah, he still had a very prominent positive
Lord of the
role.
Rings.
Yeah, Lord of the Rings. that guy. He had a very.
That's what I mean. It's like it can be done and show respect to everyone. It doesn't have to be like a shitty thing.
Yeah. And like it, and again, we don't know. I'm glad we're bringing this up, but we don't know if he did that on purpose or if that was supposed to be a period piece to show, you know what I mean, what was happening to minorities.
I think he had a story he was trying to tell, and he was trying to tell a story. And if he's a black man, then he's probably trying to tell the story that, that he grew up in.
Right.
Yeah.
So it's like. And you want a character that's struggling. You don't want some rich fucking kid getting a transformer. You're like, oh, life isn't fair. Like,
right.
Fuck this, they get everything. But you want it to be somebody who's like down and out. He's having trouble.
But you know what? This is one of those questions that I would like to ask him. You know what I mean? Like on a red carpet. You know what I mean? Because it would be I would like to know if that was on purpose, like if there was a deeper meaning behind it, or if, like, for real, because if there was a meaning, because like I said, I grew up in that era, in the 80s and the 90s, and I saw so much racism, inequality, you know what I mean? If there was a purpose for him telling that story and not just shitting on white people, if there was a purpose, I get it. Because again, if he was just shitting on white people, then that is wrong. You know what I mean? Because an eye for an eye isn't going to make things better. But if he was trying, and I do believe that was something that was happening in that era and probably needs to be accurately depicted on TV. But but I think it needs to be said, like, I did that for this, not just because, fuck it, I hate white folks. You know what I mean? Well, there's a difference.
Here we go. That's what I was going to say, is that, he's probably just telling a story and his understanding of struggle. And like I said, you don't want a main character that's got everything in the beginning.
Yeah, I'm glad we had this convo, though. That took that to a much deeper thought that I didn't, you know what I mean? It didn't come to me like that.
And like I said, if that was the intent to start that conversation, he did a good job. But and I think it is important to realize that it was fucked up. I mean, it was not equality, and it happens, and it did happen, and
it still happens. Yeah.
But
prime example, to toot my horn a little bit, I won my first Wyoming Association of Broadcasters Award, and I can say, yay! I was the only African American there. There were a couple Hispanics there. There were a couple Asians there. I was the only African American there. Now think about the fact that I know we're in the least populated state. You know what I mean? But out of the 600,000 people we have in Wyoming, I was the only African American at an award show for radio and TV in the entire state of Wyoming. So that me saying that is just showing that type of inequality that is still happening. You know what I mean? So,
and it's a very small group of people
it
too.
Is.
But it's not. It's the point is just as valid. You go to like Chicago or some, the situation would be totally different.
Facts.
Especially that, that also has a much richer history and draw, but yeah.
All right, well, let's get back onto the one thing. I am super excited. That was a very good point. I'm glad we got into that. That needed to be said, and I'm glad we did it on our forum. That was beautiful. Thank you for that. But I am super excited about the fact that we may get a Transformers G.I. Joe crossover. You know what I mean? It's never been done in the cartoons.
I think that looks like. Hey, can you hear me?
Yep.
Yeah.
Sorry. There's been times like I've like it completely cuts me off. I think.
Sorry, we're listening.
But no, not you guys cut me off. It cuts. Like Bill was saying, like the crosstalk makes it.
Mm-hmm.
Anyway, what do you think that G.I. Joe movie looks like, or like the crossover? What happens? And do you think that makes for a better G.I. Joe experience when they're working with the Transformers?
I think so, because the difference between Transformers and G.I. Joe, I think a lot of the G.I. Joe films have been very campy, and for a military movie, like Transformers, we know what it is, and we take it at face. We take it.
What do you mean campy?
Very A-Team-esque. You can't have a military movie where it's based upon reality.
People don't die and shit.
People don't die. You don't see blood. You know what I mean? It makes it very fake. Because honestly, I think a couple of the G.I. Joe storylines have been good, but because they were scared of that R rating or making them realistic, they have ended up being like jokes. Because the first G.I. Joe film, I think, was very well done. It was very well casted. But the fact that you've got all this laser gun shit when it's supposed to be in our shit, instead of having bullets and people dying, you know what I mean? It took a very good storyline and dropped it down to this PG-ass rating. And I think they could have done a bit. Like, it really makes it A-Team-esque. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
So I'm hoping...
Well, and G.I. Joe was like that. The cartoon was like that.
Yeah, but the comic book wasn't. The G.I. Joe comic books is one of the most accurate depictions. I said that wrong as shit. Depictions of military life ever. Like the G.I. Joe runs over the years has been one of my favorite comic books as a military person myself, because they have been so accurate. Next to like Captain America and some of the things that were going on with World War II, I think G.I. Joe has been one of the most realistic comic books out there. And I think by putting G.I. Joe and Transformers in the same live action universe, that's going to give them a little bit more.
It's going to make it better, both of them better.
Yeah, I really think so.
They'll get a cross marketing. They'll get the marketing of the G.I. Joe and the Transformers. So, and as we're seeing the no
Transformers, and he can like fight.
Honestly, I hope they don't do that. I would rather them see them go with a new cast, young stars, than to try and bring in these big actors. Because as much as I love Dwayne Johnson, I think putting him in that second G.I. Joe movie was a total fucking waste. He didn't need to be in it. He didn't make it any better. You know what I mean? If anything, he made it worse. You know what I mean? Because you got this high profile actor that didn't add anything to the screen, you know? So I would rather them see them grab a whole bunch of, BC actors or relative unknowns and make a good storyline and make them into stars than trying to bring stars into a franchise to make it big. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
Don't Fast and Furious G.I. Joe and Transformers.
It definitely looks desperate to do that. You know what I mean?
But I do think they have hope now. Like I said, the fact that they were so adamantly saying they weren't going to do it, and then they did it, you know what I mean? It's like, okay, there's hope. They think that this can be a good thing. So fingers crossed that they do it well in the future. Because next to Transformers, I mean, we all know I love Marvel, and the MCU has been great. I also have very good feelings about what's going to happen with The Flash in DC, with them bringing back the different Batman.
That's out today, too. As we're releasing this episode, that's going to be debuting the... I've been calling it the new Batman movie that unfortunately stars Ezra Miller.
Right? Yeah, you're right.
Yeah.
But
I'm doing an episode on that next week.
Oh, hell yeah. There's no way we're going to miss this. Because honestly, I don't think if this is one of those films, if we don't see it when it comes out, the spoilers are going to be all over fucking social media.
So one thing I want to say about that, and maybe we should kind of last thoughts after that.
Yeah.
But in the trailer for the Flash, there's a scene where he there's all these like little teenage girls like gooing and guying over him. Is that the best thing to put for Ezra Miller right now in this day and time?
No, I didn't notice that,
Yeah,
and
right.
hell no.
It's fucked up.
Yeah.
I mean, it's like, are they trying to make fun of this, or is like, it's? I think it's in one of the last trailers too. He's like,
because I hadn't seen that one yet.
yeah, it was like
that's in bad
It
taste.
gave me the creeps.
That is kind of fucking weird. Why would they do that?
Yeah,
Unless they filmed it beforehand and were just like, yeah, let's throw this on the trailer, and this won't be anywhere in the movie.
Yeah, why would you put it in the trailer though?
I mean, it's supposed to be. It was a joke in the script, but with knowing what actually happened, it was like, ew.
It makes the joke dark.
It makes it, like Family Guy, creepy guy, and not a good way at all.
Yeah.
Yeah.
All right, so final thoughts on the film.
I think it's worth. It's a good watch. Definitely want to see the big screen to get the action, the sound. It is worth the ticket price there. We've given our criticism, and I think it's pretty minor all in all. And I'm excited to see what's coming next.
I would agree. And like I said, because of the nostalgia of the first film, because like I said, I waited over 25 years for a live action Transformers, like what James Cameron said he had to do with Avatar. He waited, and I'm glad they waited. You know what I mean? I really would have hated if they would have done a Transformers movie before, what was it, 2010, when they did the first one with Shia. You know what I mean? I think they did a very, very, very good job with that one. But I think this is the Transformers film that everyone deserved. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
And I'm happy with where they're going with it. I'm excited to see what they do with G.I. Joe. And I have nothing but, like, I was very worried after some of the other Transformers films of what was going to go on. Now I have a very positive outlook on the future of Transformers.
Mike?
I don't think I could have said it any better than what he just said.
Yeah.
I mean, I mirror quite a bit of that. I am interested to see what they do with the G.I. Joe thing, even though I was never really a G.I. Joe fan as a kid.
We should do
I'm interested to see where the story goes. I mean, so I'm kind of invested there too. I might. Yeah, I mean, I'm gonna give the movie like an 8.5, so I kind of raised it a little bit. Just like from talking about it and then understanding, how many Easter eggs and the fan service. So I think it was a good movie overall. Like, and I'm excited to see where it goes from here.
I want to say one more last thing to my fellow 40 and up G1 fans. Stop shitting on them. Watch them with an open mind, and then come to your conclusion. Stop hating on them just because you don't like Michael Bay, or like, think about this. We are getting something that we have waited decades for, and be happy that it's happening, and that I think the storylines are getting better. That's where I'm going to end.
Before we go, I keep seeing this trailer for the new Ninja Turtles. That movie looks really good to me.
I agree. I'm glad they're actually teenagers.
I really want to see that, and I think it's going to be like maybe one of the, like, it's going to be good, I think.
I think so too.
A lot of good stuff coming
super
our
good.
way. We're getting a lot of good movies rapid fire now. I think kind of the COVID doldrums have lifted up, and we're starting to get a flow of movies and shows. Got Secret Invasion's coming up here.
Oh, I cannot wait. I think Secret Invasion is going to be the one that either propels or murders what happens to the future of the MCU. Because I think there's going to be some things that we are not expecting at all that are going to come to the light. And I think it's going to either, like I said, if it's done right, it's going to bring another level of fan service that's going to bring it back to before Endgame and Infinity War, or it could completely kill it. So I'm hoping it's done right, but I have no aspirations about what's going to happen with Secret Invasion. I can't wait to see it.
Yeah. A lot of good stuff.
I'm not as... I'm wondering what the fuck it's even about. So I'm not overly excited about Secret Invasion, but we'll see what happens.
It was a huge comic book thing. You know what I mean? Next to like
I
Civil
know what
War,
I know what
it
it's
was
about.
it was one of the big ones.
If it's about what I think it's about, then I'm not all that excited about that.
I'm excited for it for a couple of reasons. For one, I think isn't the black dude from the Netflix show Bridgerton? I think he's in it. So the fact that he's in it, I'm kind of he's a great actor. I didn't like Bridgerton. I didn't dislike it. It was for females. Let's be honest.
Yeah,
but
I know the name, but I know nothing about it.
It was like Victorian England. You know what I mean?
Yeah,
and
no.
Yeah, not my. Yeah, it wasn't made for guys. But I know he's a good actor, and I'm looking forward to seeing him in this more action, evil aspect than just being a pretty boy on TV for the girls to ogle over. So again, that with what I know about Secret Invasion, I'm curious to see how this goes, because this could really rip up everything we know about the MCU. Period.
And I'm just glad to get Samuel motherfucking Jackson back.
Why do you say that?
I'm not going to tell you. You need to watch it. I don't want to tell you because it could ruin it. You need to see this. And honestly, I would say watch the show before you even read the comics. Like, if you like the show, go back and see what the differences are. But I think this TV show, especially since the MCU seems to be going on its own route, different from 616 MCU, I think they have the potential to do some crazy shit, and we could see the entire MCU turned around.
Well, yeah, because it could make it so that a lot of what happened was actually Skrulls that were posing as heroes and shit.
So yeah, the one I've been avoiding the trailers on this one, and the only thing I've seen is everyone looking like Skrulls.
Yeah,
and it said trust no one.
And I think it's going to be great.
Yeah, he's got a good point. I guess that.
Well, I think we got plenty to talk about in
into
the
older
next
movies
episodes.
and go, oh, this was a Skrull, or this is when they got switched or whatever.
But yes, Transformers: Rise of the Beast. It was dope. Watch it. Stay for the post-credit scenes, both of them.
Yep.
Yep.
It's a good ride. And we'll be coming back with a lot of other stuff on all the new movies that you want and all these Comic Cons and pop culture comms coming our way. Comms. The beer's kicking in. So everything you need to know, thecomiczone.com. If you listen to us on Spotify, make sure to rate us. Give us those stars. Give us a good rating that we're the bee's knees.
And also, I know they're Spotify guys, but I'm an Apple Music guy.
Apple too. Nothing.
So, yeah,
nothing
make
wrong.
sure you're on there. We're on YouTube, TikTok, Instagram. We are everywhere you need to be.
And all the links are right on thecomiczone.com. And remember,
Keep it black.
Keep it black.